Good evening, everyone. Tonight, Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022, our regularly scheduled Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance Budget Workshop. I call our board to order. And did you want to do yours, Diane?
Sure, I'll call to order the Board of Finance. Thank you.
And I ask that we please all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, our next section is reserved for those people who are in attendance that wish to briefly address the boards. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. People wishing to address the board should type comment in and their name in the chat box, and you will be recognized. No one?
Looks like everybody here is a board member or staff member at this point, so there's nobody for public comment.
Okay, perfect. Our next section will be our revenues overview and discussion. I'll turn the floor over to Andy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So next up on the agenda is the revenues overview and discussion. So Elaine, I'm going to lean on you for that, to bring that up. You or Donna. These virtual meetings are a little bit different than what we're normally used to.
Okay, do you want me to just run through the revenues as they're
Yeah.
presented?
Could you please? That'd be great.
Elaine, I'm going to show the summary first, and then we can,
Okay, so-
then we'll switch over to the detail.
Perfect. Okay, so at this point in time, the general government revenue, I estimated to be up by about $18,000. Other state revenues, as closed by the governor's budget, are down $7,600. The ECS grant monies are up by 180. It does not appear that they're taking the proposed $180,000 cut that was presented last year. And we did receive, or we are anticipating to receive the $5,997,000 for the current fiscal year. We're losing the other revenue source because Rain paid all of its debt back to the town of Hebron for the connection expense for the gas. Contribution from the debt management fund is at $575,000, or a decrease of $48,000. And there is currently $1.8 million in the debt management fund. Back taxes, I went through this with Adrian at length. We bumped it up by $55,000. And yes, for the last 2 years, we had significant back tax collection. And that is the reason why we're not willing to go any higher higher because we have collected a lot of the outstanding back taxes. In years prior to that, it was around 425, between 425 and 450,000. So Adrian was comfortable just with the 425,000 at this point in time. And then based with the budget expense as presented by the town manager, we would need a tax increase of $1,007,000 on a mill rate of 32.39. And then if you want to go through the revenue summaries, she'll bring that up.
Elaine, if you could pause for a minute, Mr. Chairman, I think I saw Diane had a hand up.
Yeah, it's the audio is kind of broken.
Donna, can you bring up our revenue summaries?
Yeah, Elaine, you're breaking up when you're talking. Sorry. I just want to make sure you knew.
I'm not sure she can even hear us.
Can't hear her at all now.
Uh-oh. Sorry.
I'll send her a text.
I don't know if she can hear me.
Can you hear us at all?
The summary section
I'm calling right now.
is in section 1 of your work budget books. And it would be page 26 is the first page in section 1 of the summary. And again, what we just reviewed for what we would need in the tax revenue, $1,000,008 increase for taxes and a $55,000 increase to back taxes for a total of $1,070,000.
So she's gonna sign out and try to sign back in and try to rectify that problem, Dan.
Okay, thank you.
Normally, she doesn't have that problem with her computer in other meetings that I've had with her. So hopefully that rectifies the problem.
I agree. Or if worse comes to worse, maybe she could call in and just use her cell phone audio.
Hello?
me now?
Sounds better. Let's see what happens. Thank you.
Okay. So where do you want me to pick up from?
Diane? Diane DeRosso?
She's on
Yeah,
mute.
why don't you just start from where you are
You want me to-
here? From page 26?
Okay, so these are the page 26, so that's back to the tax revenue, or page 27 for the state revenue?
I don't think that we heard what you said about page 26 very well, or at least I didn't. So let's do tax revenues.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is the same as the summary page with $1 million increase to the current grand list, $55,000 increase to the back taxes, or a total of $1,070,000 for tax revenue. Okay, and then this is the state grants. As I said with the summary page, it doesn't appear the state's taking the $180,000 cut in the ECS money as was disclosed last year. So we anticipate receiving the $5,997,000, and we anticipate receiving that for the current fiscal year as well. The only grant that I know of that we're definitively not getting this year is the municipal projects grant for 2216 and the additional vets grant. Those were the only two grants that were not disclosed with the governor's budget. So we anticipate total state revenue of $6,397,775, or almost a 3% increase, and dollars $172,987. For departmental revenue, I tried to scrutinize these and talk with some of the department heads that they anticipated. I did bump up some of them or decrease them based on actuals and where we thought money might be coming in from. The building department is kind of a hit or miss. I did bump that up by $5,000. They did collect about 165 last year, but in conversation, thought 130,000 was a good estimated budget to put in. Same thing with the compactor recycling and everything else. Recording fees, we bumped those up a little bit from the town clerk's office, but you never really know what you're going to get. It's contingent on the activity in those offices. So this ended up being for this department about an increase of $55,000 or 8% that we anticipate collecting. And then Department 004 is also the town government anticipated revenues. Again, I did the same thing we did with the other departmental revenues, hoping to get what we're budgeting or close to it. Interest, as you know, is down significantly, interest rates. So we will probably even be lucky if we get the $11,000. And again, we lost the RAM revenue, so that's another loss to some of our revenues. And then I think the other department is for any surplus revenues like the debt management, where we're hoping to get take the $575,000 from the debt management fund. And that's it.
Thank you, Elaine. Any questions, Mr. Chairman, on the revenue side of it?
Well, I'll open it up to the board members, both boards. Any questions on the revenue side? Now, I have one question. With the building department now going with online permitting, does that generate anything? I know when you pay for a building permit with a charge card, there is and I'm not sure what the percent fee is on that. Does the town receive any of that, or is that all a fee that goes to the charge card company?
Yeah, I believe that's a convenience fee that goes to the people that provide that service by paying online. It shouldn't be a very high percentage. And I'll let Elaine, I don't know if she knows what that is, or Don, I think it's like 2+%, something like that, but yeah.
It's only a few dollars, but I didn't know if the town,
We don't receive any of that fee revenue. That all goes to the vendor, yes.
okay. Anybody have any other questions on the revenue side? Yeah, Diane.
I'm sorry, Elaine, is that page that you were showing with the yellow band at the top in our budget books?
The summary page?
Yes, and
The
I
summary-
see the summary of revenues on page
It should be-
4. I don't have a page that looks like that, though.
Yeah, it's right in the front of the section 1, so you see the index, it's from the other side.
There's a very slight change in that page from what's in your budget book. The page that's on the screen shows a slight reduction that the RAM board took right after the town manager presented his budget. So the numbers aren't going to align exactly with this
Ah.
page.
I see where it is. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Got it.
Okay, anybody have any other questions? Or does anybody need more time to review or go over this document? Yes, Mel?
Only one comment. I believe that the number that's in there for special ed excess cost is the current year's number. I believe that when the Board of Education presented, they did say that they were going to have an additional outplacement. Did we get that number from the Board of Ed, or did we just carry the current number? I mean, I don't think we're talking maybe $15,000 more, but whatever.
There was well, there's a couple of papers. There is something that I don't know, Diane wants to talk to it, that was addressed to her from the school. Do you want me to read that, Diane, or you had forwarded that to me?
That's, I think that's something different than what, I'm sorry, Diane, I didn't mean to cut you off. You're on mute.
That is something different, Dan.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's nothing to do with this. That has to do with monies they got back last year.
Yeah, and that's something that's that unexpended funds account. It was set up for them a couple of years
Yes.
ago. And so that doesn't relate to the budget. at this
Okay,
point.
it in a
So it
sense
might.
does, if they're requesting that it go not back to the town, but somewhere else. Yes, it does have a impact on the budget.
No, it would only drive up our surplus at the end of the year. It would not go into the budget per se.
Yeah, true, but it's still dollars and cents.
Oh, no, I'm not disputing that, Dan. You're right.
I think what Mel's asking, if I might try to answer that, is Tom really didn't change his budget. He did send us some other numbers that he's looking at with possible movement since he presented his budget, but he didn't actually change his numbers other than more of an insurance reduction, but then he had some add-ons too, but he didn't formally put that into an updated budget yet.
Yeah, I thought I printed that page out and I don't see it.
Will we have those updates, Andy, at some point before we set the budget, or?
You know, I don't want to speak for them. I'm not sure if anybody's on here from the Board of Ed. He sent it to me and I had to come up with a game plan. And I think I sent that to Diane and to some of the people that, as a budget builder, the suggestion would be to try to come in roughly around 32 mils. It's a reval year. We're never going to lower everybody's taxes because it's all over the place. But at 32 mils, I kind of sent an email to both superintendents, Ram and Hebron, and I told them where we were originally, we needed $350,000 worth of cuts. I proposed some cuts to the town's budget, which you'll see tonight. Ram had a meeting last night on Monday, and they came back with some additional cuts. So Tom was asking a question late in the day today while I was in the Chatham Health District meeting. And I told him just kind of rough numbers. We're looking about $118,000 from him. If he could, that would get us down to 32 mils, which I think if the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen was in agreement, that would pass to the voting booth. To try to get to 31 mils, Elaine will explain that. That's like another $1 million worth of a cut.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, yes, Mark.
just listening to what Andy just said, and I just have a general comment as we all look to get this budget done and do the best we can for the people. Yeah, I respect people's passions for education, for open space, for recreation, and whatever else they're passionate about. But we can't let our passions blind us from the needs of others. An example, the senior citizens. They're the least represented. They require the least amount of tax expenditure. They pay for kids to go to school, even though they haven't had kids in school for 40 or 50 years. And what they need is to be in a safe community. What they need is public service. I don't think that we can cut things that save lives. Minutes, seconds matter. Public safety matters. The fire department matters. The public works matters. But it seems like those are the things that we always look to shave. And our educational system is phenomenal. Both my stepkids went through there, shined through it. I've worked at Hebron L for 7-8 years. I've been the school resource officer at RAM. The education is second to none. So as we think about this, everybody has to make some kind of cut to help everybody. Nobody's more important than anybody else. But it just seems to me that boards of ed just want to spend all the money they can without any thought to what the rest of the town needs. And there's more than this town than just education. It's important, but there's more. And I just, it just bothers me that it seems that the unrepresented don't have a voice. And that's why I got elected. That's why I ran to come to speak for people who didn't have a voice, who were underrepresented, and to get them what they need. So I don't know if anybody's on board with me for that, but I would be derelict in my duty if I didn't express how I felt and how the people who elected me felt. So that's just a general statement I have as we go forward. Thank you.
Yep, not a problem at all, Mark. And I'm just going to step back. After our last budget meeting, I went in, talked to Andy and Elaine, and a couple of my questions, I says, and they explained why it would be impossible. But I says, just trying to get at least to be able to open conversation. What would it look like, if we were to basically do a 0% tax increase? But that can't be, because with revaluation, if everybody's property had gone up the same amount, you could do it. But because of, with values all over the map, there's no way to adequately say, if we were to cut this, then that would equate to that. So then we discussed possibly a 32 mil, which is a slight deduction over what we were given at the onset. Elaine, Donna, and Andy have worked very diligently with coming up with a budget that, potentially hits that 32 mil mark without jeopardizing anything, I believe, with any kind of payroll, with any of the safety aspects that were put into the budget, the added on EMS weekend support staff, getting our employees far closer to where like employees and like communities are. So I believe that their numbers are representing or representative of those missions. And if I'm wrong, they can correct me. But I'm not sure if the easiest thing would be to just get into what they are proposing for our discussion. Andy, you're on mute. You're on
Muted.
mute.
So just quickly to answer Mel's question, we have the email from the Hebron superintendent, and Elaine can read that with his that was later this afternoon regarding the budget when I was talking back and forth with him about coming in at the 32 mils.
Okay, so Donna, Andy, and I worked today and moved some other items from CIP into the ARPA funds, so we reduced CIP. RAM also further cut their budget last night, so we have cuts from them, and where we stood at the end of the day was at a mill rate of 32.13, or now a budget of $37,342,920. To get to the 32 mills, we would need another $118,000 to get to a flat mill of 32. So in our discussions and in our attempts to ascertain the 32 mill rate, Andy asked me to reach out to Caitlin because we did have further savings in our medical insurance costs to see what their reduction was. Caitlin told me they could take a reduction of $37,183 for their insurance needs. But then a few moments after having that conversation with Caitlin, Tom Baird sent an email to Andy, myself, Caitlin O'Leary, and Heather Pettit that reads, Andy, I wanted to give you a brief update on where we are trending for next year since the original budget development. An insurance rate reduction from 0.4% to, or minus 4% to minus 6% for renewal of $37,183 in savings. An additional outplacement from 2 students to 3 students with a $100,000 estimated additional cost. An additional paraprofessional, new preschool student need of $25,000 to $50,000. And then additional preschool costs, more families eligible for reduced tuition through school readiness of an $8,620 loss in revenue. Let me know if you have any questions. And that was the last correspondence, and that was at 3:02 p.m. today.
So then he had responded back for clarification, wanting to know if we had already introduced the reduction from RAM and the town of Hebron regarding the insurance costs. And I had assured him that we had, and that we still, with what RAM settled on and what we tried to find and move around, we're still looking for $118,000 to come in at the 32 mils. I don't believe if we don't come in at 32, we might have trouble getting this budget to pass, but that's my professional recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and you guys can, go from there. And I believe Donna's got the list up of what we're proposing. I got it.
So these reductions that we're showing here on the left-hand side of the page are, the first two are the RAM reductions. The $8,000 is the reduction they took right after the town manager presented his budget. And then the 80,000 is what they did last night. And then the other items listed below that are recommendations from the town manager and staff of where we can reduce the town government budget. And a couple of these items we're going to move out of the budget proposal into ARPA. And with those reductions, it brings us down to that 32.13.
Anybody have any questions? Yes, Mel.
Two questions. Number one, or a question and a point to go along with Mark's comments. But the question I have is, did RAM do anything in terms of acting on the 600,000, was it, from that the auditors ended up with as excess for 2021?
Mr. Chairman, I can try to answer that.
Please.
So, Mel, I believe in talking to Scott and Leslie today, they still are in the position where they want to take as much as that as they can, as they're allowed, and give us the rest, which would be like splitting up $40,000. I think that's part of the 80 that Donna explained.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a $22,000 credit that we're going
To Hebron, right, to Hebron.
Right.
Okay.
And that's built into the numbers that we're showing tonight.
The comment I want to make along, somewhat along the lines of what Mark Rivera made, were based on feedback I got this weekend at Maple Fest. I didn't spend a whole ton of time there, but Sunday afternoon, I got nailed by about a dozen people, all about the budget, and they brought up some good points, and I had a brief conversation with Donna on it. I haven't changed my mind. This is a good budget. I think the target you're shooting at is relatively appropriate. However, we can't do this in a vacuum. And if we look at the forecast for fuel, the forecast for our economy, for food, based on what's going on worldwide, this is not going to clear up in the next 6 months. So this is going to be taken well into the next fiscal year, if not beyond. So we just need to keep that in mind, I believe, as we're going through these negotiations. I think if we ignore it, or we don't address it, I should say, that it's going to come back to bite us. So thank you. Did anyone else get any comments? That's my only other question.
Actually, the only things I had a couple of people trying to ascertain what was happening with their taxes. They says, my house value went, sky high. So that means I'm going to be paying, another 30% in taxes. No. It's trying to explain people the mathematical equation between the amount of money that the town needs, their property assessments, how a mill rate is calculated, and the dollars that then equates to. It's very confusing for people. They don't understand all of the moving parts of it. And I tried my best to explain it, but you know, all people see is, well, my house appreciated XYZ dollars, so that means. And as I tried to explain to them, you know, everybody's property probably had a higher evaluation. That
No.
said, some people had a higher increase than others. And that all plays into what they're going to pay, you know, at the end of the day. And trying to explain that, I don't know of any easy way to do it. You know,
Danny, what I was doing with that one, because I got asked a couple times by that, is I referred people to the spreadsheet that's on the website.
yes, I did that too.
Yeah.
You know, I did
Because
that also.
Yeah.
But that still doesn't give them necessarily an explanation. You know, re-eval years are always tough years, you know, because people just don't always quite get how the whole revaluation. And I had people, well, why did you do it? It's like, well, the state mandated it. Well, why?
It's the law.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we're just a little fish at the end of the stream.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, that was, you know, pretty much all I was questioned on. You know, I don't know about other people. You had your hand up, Pete? You're on mute.
Yeah, no, I just was going to comment earlier on Mark's comments, but just provide some of my thoughts on it. I think when the reevaluation is legitimate because it is confusing, but I think it's a reflection of general worry. And we can't solve all of that ourselves. You have inflation at a rate that surpasses the average corporate increase in salary. So so people are getting less, or their power of their dollar is less. Connecticut is an outrageously expensive state to live in, regardless of what Hebron does or doesn't do. I think that what we need to do is, one of the things that Mark said was, we need to demonstrate that we've done everything we can to recognize the challenges that a budget, the budget faces, that the public faces with a budget or an increase. We have to demonstrate that every area has done everything they can do to cut money where they can without sacrificing services. So if you said what's more important, the extra education expense or saving someone's life in public service, I can't tell you one's more important than the other, but we clearly can't just simply put the burden all in one area or not touch another area simply because it doesn't seem popular. I think when you get down to smaller amounts relative to the budget, like Andy's talking about, finding some money under a couple of points, I mean, this is corporate speak, so I apologize in advance. It's management will. Can you find that amount of money in the Board of Education's budget to add to where other areas are sacrificing? My perspective is yes. You may not love it, but you can do it without sacrificing the significant services and quality increase that we have. You just have to figure out how to do it. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but can you do it? I believe you can. But we have to answer to the public that we've done everything we can to recognize that we have to be fiscally responsible without jeopardizing the key services and support that we provide to the community and why they're here. They're here for education, they're here for open space, they're here for quality of life. They recognize they're probably going to pay more living in Hebron than other areas because they're paying for those services and support, but we have to do it fiscally responsibly. So I think we do have to demonstrate that everybody is sacrificing without giving up services. And so I challenge all of us to think about it like that as we look at this budget, and challenge the other areas of our budget to do the same, to look at it and to not sacrifice the services for the elderly because we're afraid to cut something at the schools. We have to challenge ourselves to do that. So I appreciate, Mark, you bringing that up. And I think it's important that we sort of think about it from the broad perspective because we represent all constituents, not just the ones that shout the loudest. Thanks.
Well said, Peter. Well said.
Yeah, and again, I just reiterate, again, back to both you and Mark, that this budget does not cut any of those kinds of services. It is fair to the seniors. It's fair to what I'm trying to say. The emergency services requests are in there for the added weekend staff. None of that's been cut, and it's fair to our town employees, which again is something to watch for.
Well, so I turn to my friend Tiffany, you're the communication expert. So the challenge continues to be for us, how do we effectively communicate that? Because the budget itself is overwhelming and people just, am I paying more? Did you really do a good job? I mean, how do we communicate that more effectively? So the public sees that, to Dan's point, those services aren't being cut. They also see that we sacrificed areas and we really looked hard. It wasn't that we just threw over the fence and said, you guys will pass it because we said you should. I mean, people sacrificed. So how do we communicate that better than we have in the past?
So if I might, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I do think reval is a huge part of this, right? Because certainly in most years without the inflation we're seeing, people would want their properties to be valued at a certain amount, right? Because we want properties that are that have a certain amount of number attached to it, right? So I think education about reval is important. I also think that budgets reflect values, right? And so what I've seen in my time living in town and in my short time serving, people really do value education here. A lot of my constituents value that as their top priority. And so I think it will be important as we move ahead to talk about how this budget maintains our commitment to our children, our commitment to our seniors. And I also think the list of ARPA projects is actually really valuable. I think there we can demonstrate that we are taking those funds, once in a lifetime funds, and making significant lifelong investments in the health of our community, improving the lives of seniors who can enjoy our recreational facilities. And I think that's part of it as well. And I think that also shows how responsible we're being, because as been alluded to, we're taking projects out of the CIP and moving it over to be used to be funded by ARPA, which means it's less of a strain on our capital improvement plan. And as we've talked about, these are projects that ordinarily would never make the cut. And so I think all of that is important to communicate as effectively as we can. It's a lot of information to process, but in small pieces, I think it can be very effective.
Sorry to put you on the spot, but very well said. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Moving. Well, is everybody satisfied at this point then with moving to the Board of Finance that proposed the latest proposed budget that's been proposed to us? I'm just wondering, can we get off of that and get into CIP? Gail, anybody?
Mr. Chairman, can I just clarify, are we talking about moving forward the town budget with the current 32.13 mill rate to the Board of Finance to examine? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, I'm saying, I would like to, unless there's more discussion on the items in the general budget, I wanted to get into the CIP budget. We still are not putting forward any numbers yet, but I'm just trying to pick away the pieces so that we then have something that we can then pass to the Board of Finance. Does that make any sense?
I'm prepared to move on and look at CIP if others are.
Okay. Mark, Peter, Gail, Andy, anybody?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Okay. Andy,
Okay, so I guess the flavor is to move on to the ARPA proposals. We'll show you what we're proposing to take out of the CIP and put into that. Donna has the list up, what was in CIP. So I would think at tonight's meeting, it's tough to put both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance on the spot, but I think in order to move the budget and the CIP budget forward, we would need to have some sort of agreement that the items that were requested within this year that we moved into ARPA's would hold some sort of priority on that list as it moves forward.
yes.
So with that, we can go down the list if that's your pleasure.
Yes, I think that would be the easiest thing, at least the first subtotal. Now you took out, or is that the new list that we're looking at?
This is, it's the new list. It's some of the stuff we had, but we took some things out of the CIP. Do you want to see that list, what we took out and just put in here most recently?
It's kind of a mix between the two, so we need to see both, I guess. But we can go over the ARPA list since you have that up. We'll go over this.
Okay, so I just want to make a clarification and correct me if you guys have a different thought. We didn't look at the first year's funding or the second year's funding. This list is in totality. It's whatever we get total. So we did get a request from CERT for a vehicle. They got appraisals. We wanted to go with another ambulance due to the unavailability of new ambulances. The old ambulances are expensive, so there's that cost. I still would go up to look at state surplus to see what they had, but that's the budget number that was submitted, so there it is. We got new numbers for the police vehicle. There they are there. We couldn't get one. Mark can speak to that. We couldn't get one for what year, so we had to go to the following year because they're booked. There's some construction to the fire department to store both ambulances and make some room. That'll be a build out on that first bay. He's got a quote of $100,000 to bring that out. The long-standing Pendleton Drive from the Douglas Library pedestrian bridge over to Pendleton Drive by Patty Dunn's. We could have used that this weekend, that's for sure, for $101,886. We have a skateboard park that's in disarray. They got a quote of $145,000. We have a new request for pickleball courts for $65,000. They're looking to replace the playscape at Veterans, which is kind of old and aged out. That's the amount you see there for that. There's money in here for the old Colchester Road Bridge for the town's match. I mean, that's in the ARPA funds where there was discussion of possibly taking that out of here and paying that from the undesignated fund balance or when we get the surplus back from the lead project. So that's still on this list for now. They're also looking for a Gilead Hill school playscape. That's for the younger kids, the preschool and the kindergartners. They're looking for one age sensitive to that. And then Donna got all the security measures for the town buildings. We just updated that budget, I think as late as today. So there's that number. And there's a subtotal. There's other capital projects from $10,000 to $74,999. There's a Martin Road Construction Engineering Town match at 25,000. That's for almost a $3,000 grant. Senior Center generator, we got donated from the upgrades to the sewer pump stations. So that's the cost of hooking it up and putting an automatic switch in. The Hammer softball fields are looking for $20,000 to add to their kitty to complete that project. The fire department boat, marine boat and trailer, 23,000. Vandal-proof surveillance cameras at veterans, 12,000. Virtual meeting room, conference equipment, library, and town building. We're still waiting to get those final costs. We're actively working with them. Trail repairs, that's $12,000 of stone dust to touch those up. And then the fire department, we moved out the battery operated rescue tools to reduce the town's budget of $50,000. And then the other things that we're looking at, AHM HVAC system, they did get the numbers on that. We don't have them yet. They want to have a meeting. We have the dog park earmarked right now at $50,000. Also in here, placeholder, the old town hall, building maintenance and repairs. That's just to spruce the place up. It's in the center of town, help a nonprofit. Communications equipment, radios. That's with the new state police updated system. That would help the public works upgrade their radio systems, which are going to be obsolete. And then we're looking to install EV charging stations throughout the center of town. And that number is there. So the grand total thus far, unapproved, is $1,818,341.
Thank you. I just did some quick math. If we do take out the old Colchester Road Bridge match and put that back into the, I want to say it was the undesignated fund that you were talking that coming out of. We've got $1,400,000 in an account at this time. I believe that was what we were led to believe. So by removing that bridge amount, that would leave us $374,359 of available dollars now, that we could pick away on some of these other things if we so desired. The bridge monies had, again, Andy, I don't know if you want to talk to that. I'll let you talk to that.
Well, I think early on, we didn't know we were going to get these ARPA funds, and even though it may be eligible for that, I'm not sure that the Hebron community would think that would be a good use of those funds. I think, and I don't want to speak for the Board of Finance, but in my conversations as a town manager, I was always under the impression that we were going to offset the 80-20, the town's 20% contribution was either going to be from the undesignated fund balance, or when we finally got the state audit done on the lead project, we get that reimbursement back to it, which was somewhat close. So it's a long-standing road improvement. We haven't done a bridge in a while. I know we did, the last one we did was Marjorie Circle. They're quite expensive, so I would think with the back taxes that we collected and the percentage that we have there, my recommendation would be to take it out of there, but that's up to the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen. I just, that would, what I would recommend, and leave these ARPA funds for, other things that probably wouldn't make the list or a cut.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Okay, Mel, I'm gonna have Diane first. She had her hand up first, then you can be second, please. So Diane?
Yep, thank you. Just want to recollect the conversation around the old Colchester Bridge project. And Andy, I do recollect exactly what you described, wanting to use the offset from the lead project or unassigned fund balance in its place. And so I'm speaking up particularly not just to support you, but when we had this discussion in a Board of Finance meeting, was there anything documented that the Board of Finance would have had to approve that reflects that that's how we intended to pay for it. And I think I'm asking Elaine.
No, I can answer that. I think,
Okay.
hopefully you and Mel can remember, we'd always said that money was to come from other sources, one being possible reimbursement from the lead, the other one possibly from the undesignated fund balance due to the percentage that we had in there. That was always anticipated. I'd have to go back and look at the minutes, but that's my recollection.
Right, and did we have to make a commitment to the state before we did it? Was there a commitment that we had to make too?
Yes.
Yes, and so it might have been around that same time period where we would find notes on this. But I agree exactly with what you're talking about. And now I'll stop talking.
Mel?
Yeah, I have the same recollection. Excuse me, that Diane has. I do remember before any of this ARPA stuff came up, we had, I think, and this may have also been as far back as when Dave was still chair, we had discussed taking those dollars from the fund balance. In looking at the audit, it looks like we still have a healthy fund balance in terms of percentage and dollars. Based on the outstanding job done by the folks on the first floor, on the ground floor, in collecting all those back taxes. The only question and point I would like to make on the dollars coming back from the lead pipe project. First of all, Andy, how many dollars are you thinking are coming back? Because unless I'm wrong, and I'll defer to Elaine, I believe there's only about $70,000 more coming back.
We have the majority of the reimbursement in that fund, but we can't utilize those funds until the state audit is completed. So.
Oh, so you're
if
not
the state
talking, okay, so you're not
We're not
talking
talking so much about additional dollars. No, we're just talking
Okay.
about the reimbursement as a whole.
I'm good. That answers it. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Diane.
Sorry.
Oh.
What's the amount that we got back from the lead project? And just so that everyone is aware, that money came back from the lead remediation project at Gilead Hills, no,
Hebron.
Hebron Elementary.
Yes.
And those funds will end up, once the state audit is complete, then those monies would go into the unassigned fund balance. So that's kind of why we were linking the two together there. But Elaine, do you know an estimate of how much money that was that we have that we can't use yet?
Yep.
I'm looking in the audit report as we speak right now for what the total amount was. But if memory serves me correctly, we've gotten over $500,000. So, I mean, the discussion back, and I think it was last spring even that we had that, or late spring, was that we would use money from the unassigned fund balance in the general fund. And then once the lead remediation project was finalized and closed and the audit performed, then those monies could be returned back to the general fund balance. So there's significantly enough money in the fund balance. We have a 19.7% or over $7 million in the unassigned fund balance. So it is not an issue, but I thought this was segregated in the audit, but it's bulked in the capital project. So I can't tell you definitively the dollar amount, but it's over 500,000. We got 187,000 in one reimbursement, and then 300 and something in another. So it's over $500,000. And I think, as Mal stated, we're still waiting for the final reimbursement, which should be about $70,000, somewhere around there.
Thank you so much.
Go ahead, please, whoever.
That was me just saying thank you. I think that clarifies, what we were originally thinking and why we were thinking that way.
So that it really does make sense to do that relocation. And that then brings at least that first list of items well below the monies that we already have literally in the bank for these types of projects. And these all do fit within the scope of what the parameters of that ARPA money is. And it helps emergency services, it helps the police. So to me, it seems like it's a good list. It's a good, well-rounded list. Yeah, and we could even then move up some of the other items and still fall within that 1.4. It helps our CIP. I don't see any downsides on this, to be honest. I don't know if anybody else has any other comments or whatever. Yes, Peter.
I think, just a comment, I think you're right. I think the messaging here is, Tiffany said it earlier with sort of once in a lifetime funds. You just talked about a balance, and we talked about the ability to sort of, or the rationale to think about along the continuum of helping in critical areas, providing things that maybe would never quite make the list, and also creating some opportunities to add some features to the community that will serve for years to come, like some of the park enhancements and things like that. That again, haven't surfaced to be allowed for in our budget recently, but clearly this money allows us to do that. So I like the idea that we create a balance and we think about this responsibly. I also think that we don't necessarily have to rush to spend all the money or half the money now. I mean, we have until, is it, Andy, I'm sorry, I forget, December 25 or 26, 26? 25?
Yeah.
December 2026.
26, right? And so I think, it's, and I applaud the work that was done to think through, like Andy, you obviously thought through all those different areas to come up with the list that you did and continue to enhance it. So I appreciate that thought process there, because it wasn't just, hey, let's just go buy a new fire truck, right? It was well thought out across the different areas that we think the community would respond and support as we think about the utilizations of the funds. So I also don't think we need to spend it all in terms of that first half. I think we can think about it like that too, as we don't necessarily have to rush. We've got a big chunk of it now. It's well thought out. We support it. And then we have plenty to sort of think about it for the future use, because obviously we have another half coming and we have some time to think through that, and we might need it more later with things that might surface. So I just wanted to support the different comments that were made. I think this demonstrates a responsible approach. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the items that I strongly implore us to consider putting into that first round would be, well, actually a couple of things. One would be the marine boat, and the other would be the vandal-proof video surveillance cameras. I cannot, in good conscience, see spending any money there without having some sort of security camera system. I've seen over the years too much vandalism. And I'm hoping Mark would support me on this. We need to have ways of protecting the town's resources, from those who may want to just trash stuff. So I don't know if Mark is on still or not, but.
I am, Dan. I was just waiting for you to finish.
So, I look for your comment on that also, if you would, please.
I support you 100% on that, because if you're gonna spend $30,000 fixing something, and then vandals come and it costs $15,000 to repair what you just spent 30 on, you already would have had your cameras. But I think the cameras are around 11,000, if I remember correctly, Andy.
They're showing 12 on this, but yeah.
Well, and even if there was a little more, Dan, I'll tell you,
Mhm.
every time that I've ever gone over to the park when there was vandalism, the pictures are so grainy. And obviously I know a lot of kids in town, so if I could see, but I couldn't tell who it was. I couldn't even tell if it was my son. The pictures are so bad. So that doesn't help us in solving the crime. And even if we do, even if you solve the crime, it's not that you even have to, you know, be Mr. Authoritative and arrest everybody, but you need to make restitution and pay for the damages that you did to public property. That should be our best interest. And then, the parents or whatever, JRB could straighten the kid out, but we need to get our money back. So I agree with you 100%, Dan. There's no sense fixing something if you can't police it, secure it, have a responsible way of maintaining it. 100% behind you.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Tiffany, yes, please.
Just a comment, if I could just jump in, and I want to give credit to my colleague Janet, who had actually mentioned at the last budget workshop we had about moving out the bridge match and using the undesignated fund balance, which I strongly support. I mean, I think if the monies are there, let's take this larger project out so we can use these ARPA funds for some other projects. And I just want to commend Andy for putting together this list. I think that this list is truly equitable in terms of how it serves different people in town, from pickleball courts to things for young children, for things for young families, for our young women in town with the monies for the Hammer softball field, and for safety across all aspects. So I think this is an equitable list. I think it is a good one. And I support moving the bridge match funds out of here. Thank you.
Okay. Should we get into CIP so we can just briefly touch on that?
We can. I just want to, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Dan,
Uh,
before we move on, can I make a comment about the bridge?
sure, Mark.
To build two playscapes seems to me excessive to do all at once. Let's just pick one or the other. And if we do use the money to build the bridge, we don't have to spend the money out of the fund balance, or we can save some money somewhere else. It just seems, why do we have to have two playscapes? We just built a new one at Hebron, if I'm correct, Andy. And we just upgrade one or two of them. And the superintendent, prior to Dr. Baird, built a one at Gilead Hills too. So I think we're going a little overboard with playscapes, and just being somebody who's around around town all the time. I don't think that's the favorite activity of a lot of things. It just, I don't see it that well attended. The one at Gilead, the one at Hebron gets a fair amount of use, but I don't see that, Dan. So I don't know how anybody else feels about that, but another sector to look at too is people on a fixed income who don't want their taxes to go up. So everybody should get a little something, including people not having to pay more taxes. That's something we haven't really talked too much about.
Well, the things on this list would not be, I mean, everything comes out of taxes one way or another, but these are out of federal funds. These are not a direct tax burden on our taxpayers. This is, yeah.
I get that, Dan, but if we could use some of that money to ease the burden of the taxes, that helps. I mean, it makes sense to me that it could save some taxes. I know on its face, it's federal funding, but if you use federal funding to pay for something we'd have to pay out of somebody's budget, whether it be the town budget or the Board of Ed budget, why wouldn't we try to alleviate that burden.
Someone? Go
Mr.
ahead,
Chair.
Tiffany.
I mean, we are alleviating the burden because there are projects in here that would likely be in a CIP list that now we're no longer in a CIP list because we're going to be using federal funds to purchase them instead. It just seems to me, I would not support taking out either of the playscapes at this point. I think they're both important. And the reality is, paying for the bridge match out of the undesignated fund balance, if I understand what's been said here tonight correctly, that had been the plan all along. And so again, as Dan said earlier, if the monies are there to cover that bridge match, we can then use what's left over of what we already have in the bank for the ARPA funds and take out even more projects from CIP that would qualify for the federal funding. So I argue that this is helping alleviate some of the tax burden. My 2 cents.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Dan, I just would like, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes, please.
I just want to clarify, even though we got one round of funding, there's no first list, second list. The second round of funding is due, this summer. So it's one list. We're not looking to run right out and spend this. We still want to go to a public hearing and get formal approval, but it's not really broken out into two different lists. I know you referred to it a couple times as the first round of funding and the second. There's really no, it's just how the money's coming, and there's no difference if you have a completed list.
Yeah. Okay, then my question would be, how would we propose the list of anticipated items to the townspeople? Would we say that this is what we have come up with as an overall thought process? When we bring this to the townspeople for their approval, how would that be done?
Well, it's a great question. So tonight, what we need to do tonight is approve the CIP budget for tonight's meeting. What I would suggest to both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, that you guys make a commitment to the items that we took out of the CIP that were slighted to be funded in this year's CIP, and give those a priority, that those need to remain on the list because we used those projects to lower the budget. I think hopefully the townspeople would understand that. But then the rest of the items, I think, are open for discussion. And then additional items could be added with suggestions. I don't think we want to formalize a tight list and then just go for approval. I think you still want some more public input.
Okay, Diane and then Peter, please.
So, thank you. I've heard Andy suggest twice that we prioritize the things in the ARPA list that moved from CIP to the ARPA list. And I would like to do that. And I'm not sure if it's an asterisk or a highlight or something, but we do need to identify those. And I am interested in how we go to the townspeople to approve how we spend ARPA funds on these projects. Is it an additional line item vote? I don't know how to do that.
It would be, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I believe in talking to the attorney, it would be done at a special town meeting. It doesn't have to be on the ballot.
Thank you. And that's it for me.
Peter?
I just was thinking about your comments about the communication. I believe that a way to think, or I would propose we think about our of communicating our thought process on the ARPA funds. So to me, I hear what Mark's saying. I personally believe that we should think about it in sort of maybe three buckets, where you have, budget reducing items relative to the, the current tax, relieving some of the current tax burden, the CIP commentary. So that's one area. You have town infrastructure. That could be things like security and things like that we view using the funds. And then we have community enhancements. So there's your parks, your skate parks, your dog park, your playscapes, whatever. But the thought process is not so much what each and every item is, but the fact that we see those funds as being an opportunity to address sort of those three areas where we could do some things that are specific to budget reduction, like explain it that way. Here are the line items, but we're looking at let's just say, to make my point as easy as I can try to make it, a third of the money we see going in that area. So these are the particulars, but that's the objective, the CIP discussion. Here's an area where we have sort of future infrastructure, the communications, the security, things like that, enhancing the town. That's whatever, the third. And then here's a third that is really the wish list, the nice to haves, the parks, the enhancements, the things that continue to not make the list, but it's an opportunity. We have funds that create an opportunity for the future. And so we don't want to slight those with just a focus on tax reduction or dealing with just one part of it. But so that's the philosophy that the boards have. And then the items underneath those are then less subject to, why are you doing a pickleball court when you could buy reduce my taxes or buy another police car, whatever. You get less of that, because we intend to do some things that are community-based, activity-based, wish list kind of fun things, because the community will enjoy it. And this is found money. And here are the other two areas. So we're not ignoring the other two areas that are opportunities for us to reduce the tax burden and think about ways to better support the country going forward. So I want to communicate it that way, because then it gets less into the line items and more into the philosophy of what we're trying to spend the money on. Thank you.
Okay.
Sounds like a
And-
good structure for it, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry, what was that?
That sounds like a good structure for triaging or prioritizing in those three categories. I think that's really astute, Pete. I like that.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let's get to the CIP, please. Sorry, Donna. Okay, so these are the anticipated CIP items. Andy, did you want to go over these items?
Yes.
Okay,
You gotta give Donna a chance to bring it up.
okay, I think she's got it up.
That's it right there. The four
Well-
items are for CIP.
For oh, there it is. I don't know, my screen jumped. I'm sorry, I apologize. I was just seeing white paper. Like Will Horton used to say, this was left blank for a reason. Okay, so there's a priority. Board of Selectmen recommended March 22. The projects, the road resurfacing and road improvements, we're leaving that in at the 311,583. The large dump truck with plow replaces truck 26, second year funding, 145. The roll-off truck replaces truck 15, third year funding, 168, 505. And then the Gilead Hill School roof restoration, we put $50,000 in there as a placeholder. So the total recommendation for the CIP budget, 675,088.
Okay, so, that's actually a lot less than what we normally spend on CIP. I know that there was discussion about the dump trucks and that there was an issue with in different years showing the funding, and I think it was a clerical thing. One of the trucks had a bad frame, so it was decided to put the money into that. So I know Diane had some questions on that. So I'll ask if Diane wants to speak on that. Yes, go ahead.
Sure, thank you, Dan. This was brought up last week by Mike McCormick. And in reviewing the 2020-2021 budget with the 2021-2022 budget, and then this year's request, going back to 2021, there was a $152,000 request and approval for truck 24. And then going forward to the budget year that we're in, there was a $100,000 request that's shown in this year's budget for truck 26 and the 145 for truck 26. In 24, truck 24 now is saying that it doesn't need to be funded until several years out. So the 152,000 more than likely helped offset the cost of fixing the body of truck 24. But how much of that 152,000 was used for that?
I can try to jump in. That's
Please.
I have Kevin Kelly on board to speak to this, but that's not what happened. I'll try to explain it
Okay.
where you can understand.
Okay.
So you got to understand, CIP comes up a certain time of year, budget comes up a certain time of year. And one thing I can assure you is we're not adding additional plow trucks. We're only replacing the plow trucks that we had. So originally we were going to replace truck 26. And you'll see it, we sent the information, if you look back on CIP, that there was funding to replace truck 26. Then we decided we weren't going to replace truck 26. One of the selectmen decided we should get away from buying all these plow trucks and possibly get a contractor. That selectman's no longer on the board. So that truck didn't get funded that year. What we had was a truck number 7. Truck number 7 was a spare truck. It was a truck that hadn't been replaced, but it was in good enough shape at that time to keep it as a spare. That's the truck in question. Hopefully you people will remember that last year, the mechanic deemed it, and Kevin, that the frame was found to be unsafe. The truck was unusable. We got rid of it. We auctioned it off. It was not usable. So because of that situation, they ended up using the money for truck 26 and replaced it truck 7. In Kevin's mind, a plow truck's a plow truck. 26, 7, 24, those are license plates. We normally go by the year of the truck. So they replaced the plow truck that was no longer able to be used. So they changed the money, which they probably should have let us know or whatever. We'll take, that's on us. So when we replaced truck 20, when he replaced truck 7, we asked for a body that had a detachable conveyor belt for the sander. When they built the truck and delivered it to us, that's not what they sent us. So it didn't meet the spec that we wanted. We said we spec'd out a truck with a conveyor that was detachable. They're easier to change when they rot out, which is quite expensive. So what Kevin did, and I'll let him speak to this, is when we replaced and got the new truck 7, we made the company make us whole, and they gave us an assembly of the conveyor belt that's bolt-on at no charge. We got it no charge because they didn't meet the spec. So what the Public Works guys did is they put that underneath truck 24. That was the biggest problem with the truck. They put that underneath truck 24. So when they did that, that enhanced the life of truck 24, which they thought was in worse shape than 26. So now truck 26 that they're looking to replace now is the oldest and is in the worst shape. So they did move some numbers around. They did change 24, 26, and 7, but that's the best explanation I can give you. And I'll turn it over to Kevin Kelly to see if he's got anything to add to that.
That was a great explanation, and thanks, Andy. But every year we do an evaluation of all our trucks. And our mechanic takes a look at them all. We review what kind of condition they're in. And truck 24, by putting that conveyor underneath that truck, we were able to bump that out about 2 years, I believe it is. I think it's going out, the budget year it's going to, but it's about 2 years out now. And we moved 26 up, seeing it's the oldest truck. And it's got 19 years old. By the time a new truck is delivered, it'll be 20 years old. Hopefully we can get it that quickly. So that was pretty much a great explanation, Andy. Thank you. Any other questions?
Go
Yeah,
ahead, Diane.
do you mind? Okay, so I'm concerned that we had CIP funds requested and approved by the town for a specific item that was then used to do something else that isn't quite documented. And so I hear what you're saying, that a truck is a truck is a truck, but they're different trucks. And, it was started out saying that number 7 was a spare truck. Well, if it was a spare truck, then why are we taking the money that we allotted for truck 26 to a spare truck to replace a spare truck that by definition is a spare? So, and then of course, doing that without, perhaps without Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance approval. And what's done is done at this point. I do think that it needs to be documented for the record and for our asset list. And that's kind of my thoughts on that.
What do we have to do to document that, Andy?
Yeah, I hear her. I disagree. A plow truck's a plow truck. Even though it was a spare truck, it still had a route. We still plow with it. What we need to do is have the ability, when something after the CIP process comes up, is to make the determination on what's best for the town. But maybe we should have, I guess, Diane, what we're trying to say in our truck, it's a number, it's a license plate on the truck. We could have just changed the plates and that would have solved it. We don't play games like that. I think we're guilty of not coming back and saying exactly what we're saying tonight. There's no excuse for that, and we'll take the blame for that. But other than that, I think what the money was allotted for was a plow truck, and I think that's exactly what we spent the money on. I don't want to get too far down that road that we did something that we shouldn't have. We bought an identical truck that was approved in the CIP, identical. So just the plate number was different.
And so I have one more point. From an accounting perspective, each asset is unique. And I think Mal has his hand up.
Yeah, Mel and Elaine. Go ahead, Mel, and then Elaine, please.
Yeah, just a question, and I'm not sure who this is for, but I know that there's I won't say I know. I believe there's a legislative process tied with capital funds that you have to designate the funds, you have to designate the amount, you have to designate the quote project. Is that correct? When we vote on the CIP budget, it's warned that we're going to purchase a plow truck for so many dollars, and we're going to purchase a leaf blower for so many dollars. And do we just do that for transparency, or is that a requirement of the law?
From what I know, you have to have a 5-year plan in order to get the funding. The specifics of that, I don't have that answer to tonight, but
Okay.
after 37 years in the business, Public Works before the town managership. In East Haddam and in Hebron, if we see, I think the issue is Mel, you've been on it as long as I have.
Right.
We have truck 2, truck 7, truck 5, truck 36. They're all in a 5-year plan all at the same time. Same thing with the 25-year plan, which I pulled out today. All those trucks are in there, but at each year, as Kevin said, we have to evaluate which ones we need to upgrade or slight for the next replacement. That should have been communicated back. We'll take responsibility of that. But what I'm trying to draw the line here is the money that was allotted and voted on for a plow truck, that's exactly what we did with that money.
I don't have a problem with that. That's not what I was getting at, Andy.
Yeah.
What I was getting at is there's a process to get it approved. And I thought there was also a process to get it changed. And I thought it was simply that the selectmen could vote to change that. Was there a town meeting requirement or whatever? And the reason I'm asking that is all I'm saying is we need to all be aware of these processes as we go forward. I mean, I will support Andy. I will support you 100% in saying that I don't think any of the 14 years I'm sorry, the 12 years I was on CIP, I don't think any year all the vehicles were in the same priority because of things that happen to those vehicles, whether they blow a transmission or we determine rust, whatever. All I'm saying is if there's a process, we should just make sure everybody knows that there's a process and what the process is. That's
I
all
agree.
I'm saying here.
No, I agree.
Thank you.
Elaine, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to let everybody know that when assets come off, we do remove the correct vehicle. We have it by VIN numbers. And then when the replacement is purchased, that's what goes back on. So the assets are tracked accurately.
No, I think it's just a simple, this is one of those things that it does happen. It all stayed within the same area. It was a plow truck. I'm not overly concerned with it. I think just a matter of clarity to say, hey, we had this happen, so we're going to utilize this money from here to there. And I can't see anybody that would have said, no, we have to, whatever. So yes, Diane.
So I agree. It's really just a process thing, Andy. And I know it seems like you're upset about what I'm saying. All I'm saying is it's a process thing. And I'm not saying that anybody, the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, or anybody would have said no. More than likely, it would have been approved. And it really is just a process thing in documenting, crossing your T's and dotting your I's. That's all.
Yeah, and thank you, Diane. I'm not upset. I wanted to get you the
Okay.
explanation.
Okay.
The comment kind of made it insinuate like we did something wrong. I just wanted to make sure
No.
that I don't think
No.
we did, but.
No.
It's a process.
no,
It's a process thing. There was a step missing though. And so it's not necessarily, like stepping outside of the rails wrong. It's a step missing and not getting the Board of Selectmen on board.
I agree. And I think it was a good catch by Mike. I had this conversation with Kevin, and Mal knows as well as I do, Donna's a stickler in trying to get the department heads to update the information. So the one thing I can say, and it's not in being obstinate, is we try to give so much information and almost bites us. So we have 5 plow trucks at the time on a CIP to be replaced. We have to give the ability to the director and the mechanic to evaluate those each year. And things happen within that process, within a 5-year plan that change. We're guilty of not coming back and updating the Board of Finance on those changes. So we'll take responsibility for that.
My
Okay.
apologies
Chairman?
if something was missed.
Nope, did somebody, Mark or
It's
somebody?
Mark, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Hey, can we, guys, can we agree upon a solution that is agreeable to everybody? And going forward, we learned a lesson from this and we won't repeat it, but for this particular incident, is there a solution we can all agree on and resolve this?
Well, it's just very simple. And when a change occurs that in the approved CIP process, really it's just a matter of letting the Board of Selectmen know that, hey, this truck ended up with a broken frame and we just want to utilize it for this instead of that. You know, a very simple notification. It all made sense what they did, perfect sense. It's just a matter of, you know, just an informational. And then possibly on the updated CIP plan, maybe an asterisk and, you know, a footnote that this was done instead of that because of, and that way nobody's going to look and say, oh, gee, how come there's, you know, showing on this line and then on that line and that was purchased. You know, so it's a simple fix. You know, I think it's a very simple fix. And it would clear up a lot of you know, questions down the road, especially, you know, from possibly somebody, you know, not necessarily involved with, you know, what we're doing here. I don't know. Am I wrong on that?
Mr. Chairman,
I hear a voice. Yes.
now,
Chris, I hear old voices all the time. No, that's another story.
can the solution simply be that the selectmen publish a process? Because as Diane said, it's a process issue, that's all. And I believe that there was a process that was formerly being used with changes, because this isn't the first time that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, but this isn't the first time we've had to change priorities after something was approved. And that's all I'm saying. I think the solution is to move forward and have a documented process. That's all.
So just quickly, this isn't a criticism. I'm the president of CASHO that covers the whole state. So the town of Avon, they put a plow truck in the CIP, they fund the plow truck, they buy it. We can't do that here because we don't have enough money. So we fund multiple trucks over multiple years. So in doing that, that causes difficulty in year 3 when we're replacing trucks at 20 years old and they're replacing trucks at 13 or 15 years old. We have to make educated decisions down at the garage to say, okay, like they did, and it's to save the taxpayers money. The Board of Finance, once again, thank you for giving us the money during the season to add that new body onto the other truck, which pushed it out. You're gonna see Kevin come again and take a truck out of CIP or push it out because we want to do that again with another body to extend the life to save the taxpayers the burden of paying $250,000 for a new plow truck. So that's not a criticism. It's us trying to work with you, but by doing that, we got ourselves jammed up.
Right. So put a process in place and we follow it. That's all. Nobody's criticizing.
No, I don't take it that way.
And
If we don't have a written process, we stand to make the same mistake. And our auditors come through all the time and they're looking for business processes. They're looking for all sorts of processes. What's one more?
well,
Yeah, go ahead, Diane.
sorry, Dan, thank you. And Mal, I agree with what everyone's saying. And should this be like, is there CIP in the town charter? I'm not sure if it can go in there or not, but Dan, the second point that you made, in addition to having a process, is making a note in the CIP plan. So because your budget books are it's like public information, right? So if you continue to go back just to the budget book that has, what was requested and then what was approved, and there's no mark of, okay, this changed, then we have to go back to you guys and say, oh, what happened here? And it's a couple years old. So then you have to dig up, from memory, what actually occurred and potentially, the facts surrounding the situation. So if it was just sort of documented along the way, it would be a little bit easier to keep track of.
Okay, so, okay, well, let's try to move on because we're
Yeah.
already 8:40. Unless somebody else has anything else pertinent on this. So are we all in favor of or Board of Selectmen in favor of moving to the Board of Finance, our recommended CIP plan as presented? And I think, would it be proper and fitting for me to call for a vote on this? So we can try
Yes.
to move things along. Yes, Peter.
And that's fine. I just want to account for Andy's comment is that the CIP that we're approving is contingent upon the CIP items that are in the recommended ARPA fund list. So isn't that sort of one and the same? We have to sort of think about those two in conjunction, or otherwise things will move. The reason this list is smaller in dollars is because some of them are sitting over in the ARPA fund list. So we need to account for that in this vote, or do you not think that's necessary?
Go ahead, Andy, please.
No, this is a vote just on these projects. And what I was asking for earlier is a commitment to make sure you try to press in a prioritized list, those other items get added first. Because if they don't get funded in the ARPA list, then they're gonna get pushed out and be put back in CIP at another budget. But due to the charter, we have to finalize the CIP budget.
Okay, I'm thinking of that comment that you made, Andy, was I just want to make sure we think about the two together because you had made that earlier. So that was okay. So as long as you're comfortable with this, or we have to do it this way, it's fine. I didn't want to lose sight of that some of them were sitting over on the other list. Okay,
That's okay.
thank you.
And Peter, just to again continue on that, that's one of my reasons that I'm hoping that, we will have or the Board of Finance will do a public hearing on the finalized numbers that they are going to present to the voters to be voted on. It would be nice, well, we have to do the CIP and the town budget, which includes the school budget and RAM numbers are all part of that budget amount. The three questions: do you approve a town budget of XYZ? A CIP budget of XYZ, and then the other question is the RAM budget. The RAM budget numbers are included in the town budget, and the Board of Ed is included in that overall town budget.
Danny, there are 4 questions, not 3.
Okay, what's the fourth one?
There are 2 RAM questions.
Oh, okay. Yes.
The CIP.
There's CIP
Mm.
thing now. Correct. But at any rate, so
Sorry,
what
Nick.
I'm saying is, the Board of Finance needs to present both the town operating budget. Well, they need the budgets, but needs to get mentioned also is our thought on this ARPA funds somehow, whether or not it gets done at the same meeting. But like to your point, it needs to get moved forward somehow, some way. So moving on the CIP portion, is the Board of Selectmen satisfied with moving forward the CIP budget as presented to us? Gail?
I am. So that would
Mark?
be an aye, if that's a motion.
That would, if it's same with Gail, if that's a motion, it's an aye from me.
Okay. Peter?
I agree.
Tiffany?
Aye.
I agree. Aye.
And myself, aye. So we will move that forward to the Board of Finance. On the town operating budget side, and I believe she's gonna put that up. do we want to propose, I know the town budget, they cut the town budget. Do we want to do or recommend, although we can't do it, we can recommend a cut to the Board of Ed, basically commensurate to what we have reduced our budget to the Board of Finance. They're the entity that would have that ability to do that cut. We don't. And if so, how would we move that forward? How would we fill in the lines?
I don't
Well,
think,
we,
well,
oh,
Mr.
sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think that should go in the motion. However, I do think in the past, we have asked, we meaning the Board of Finance, has asked for opinions of the Board of Selectmen. And I think that might be an appropriate way to do it. And again, it's the Board of Finance's,
Correct.
decision, but I think, hey, we're all in this together. Thank you.
Dan? Mark?
Yes, sir.
I
Yes,
agree
please.
with Mel. We're all in this together and we should all make the same cuts. Nobody should be getting more while somebody else is cutting. So I would forward to the Board of Finance that they recommend that the others cut the same amount we are cutting.
Okay, Andy?
So what historically has happened in the past is the Board of Selectmen can give a target and they can make a recommendation to the Board of Finance. And then as Mel stated, the Board of Finance will make a recommendation back to both. Unfortunately, we have a regional high school, so there's not much we can do about that unless you go to the meeting. And still, not a lot you can do there. So the two entities are the town and the Hebron Board of Ed. So I've sent out an email early on. I had a letter in the paper that I think in order to try to help the taxpayers in the situation we are in the world today, that a 32 mil rate
Alright.
would be where we should come in at. I think we've given you numbers tonight. I think we've tried to do what we can do. I was hoping RAM would do a little bit better, but it is what it is. We don't have control over them. So at this point in time, I didn't have a big surplus. I don't have a lot of money to backfill any of my budget stuff. I'm not saying they did either. I just think you should make a recommendation. If that's what the Board of Selectmen feel, the recommendation from the town manager is to come in at a mill rate of 32, and that way you'd still be looking for $118,000 to do that. I think that'll pass in the voting booth is my point.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Gail.
as I talk to people of various age groups throughout town, 32 mills in my mind is my target. And even that is a big burden on many people because their wages are not going up along with this 7 or 8% inflation. And we know that's going to get worse. We know if you drive to work, you're paying what? My gas yesterday in my tank to get 12 gallons, I'm paying, and that's with regular, I paid over $50 because it was $4.21 or something. And we know that's going to get worse. So I think we need to be as frugal as we possibly can. Andy's done a great job of cutting things down. And I hate to say this because I am, as everyone knows, the most pro-education person you can be. I have grandchildren in the schools. But after the increase that the Hebron Board of Ed got last year and that they're looking for this year, I don't think it's asking too much to say, hey, Tom, Heather, can you cut that 118,000? We need to keep that at 32, and we're still going to have people in town that are going to have a problem with their tax bill. And of course, people like us are retired on fixed incomes, so we are also. And yet I support it. those things which increase quality of life in town. That's it, Dan.
Okay. Well, as I say, Peter, Tiffany, Mark. Yes, Peter.
So Andy, I'm sorry. Is it a flat 32 or is it 32.1 something? I can't see it. I mean,
We're not at a flat 32 yet. My recommendation would be to come in at a flat 32, but in order to do that.
That 118 would get us to flat 32.
Yeah, and then when you guys agree on whatever you want to do, there's an official resolution that Donna has that you guys would do with a recommendation to the Board of Finance.
Got it. So yeah, just to finish the thought, thank you. I would agree. I think Andy's recommendation is a good one. And I think we should move forward with pushing that or making that resolution to the Board of Finance to consider that, or at least that's our opinion as to something they should shoot for, however that is worded. But I just agree, and I think we should move along.
Okay, thank you. Tiffany or Mark? Tiffany?
I agree that we need to come in at a 32. I think that's a good recommendation. I think to Gail's excellent point, I mean, certainly my wages aren't going up, you know, and I'm in part of the younger demographic in town. I do want to point out that, and I think this is important for the public to know, that the Board of Education has already cut $89,000 from their budget. And I do know, as Peter has said, you know, definitely parents are quite passionate about education. But that being said, this is a shared collaborative effort. And I think that it is very reasonable to recommend a flat 32, knowing that with reval, there will be some people who will have to pay more in taxes, but hopefully this will help alleviate the burden for most of the population. So I'm in agreement with the rest of you.
Okay, Mark?
I'm in agreement with the four of you. Let's go. Let's make the motion.
Okay. Before I do the resolution, I need to be able to fill in the dollar amount, I believe. So I need to know what that is.
I think, Donna, do you have one with the flat 32 mils, what that dollar amount would be?
The only dollar amount we would need to fill in here would be the recommended reduction to the Hebron Board of Education.
So what does that
Yeah.
work out to?
That's the 118,000. Right,
Okay,
Elaine,
thank you.
can you confirm that?
That is correct.
Okay,
The budget resolution breaks out each aspect of the town government budget. So the blank dollar amount there, Dan, in the middle of the page is for your recommendation for a reduction to the Board of Ed to the Board of Finance.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
is that
Yes, sir.
appropriate? Is that appropriate? We have never included your
The
recommendation in the vote for the budget. You've
The
always
charter-
voted for the budget and then made a recommendation separate from it. I have a problem with making that part of the budget motion or resolution.
the charter allows the selectmen to make a recommendation on the Board of Ed's budget.
That's correct, it does, but it doesn't say to make it as part of the motion for the budget.
So what are we saying? We just, as the power of persuasion, make a recommendation without a resolution? Is that the
No,
appropriate
that's
way to do
not
it,
at all,
Andy and Donna?
Mark. What I'm saying is, make a motion for the budget for the dollars that you come up with, and then make a separate recommendation that the Board of Finance consider doing whatever. You have no authority under the charter to reduce or adjust the Board of Education budget by any means, and making it part, to me, making it part of your budget motion kind of crosses that line. I'm sorry, that's how I
Well,
feel.
by adding,
Obviously, you can do what you want, but
well, by adding, consider making, does that alleviate some of your concerns?
no. What would alleviate my concerns is just make the budget motion for the budget, and then make a separate motion resolution, whatever you want to call it, that the Board of Finance consider reducing the Board of Education budget by some amount. That way you've separated your recommendation for the budget that you're responsible from what you're recommending happen to the other budget. You absolutely should be recommending what you feel, if you feel it appropriate, to make a recommendation of what should
Again,
happen.
having listened to what he just said, there's two resolutions there. If the
Yeah.
bottom one we just take out, be it further resolved,
Yeah, we'll
then
just do another
take
resolution.
further out, then it becomes two different motions.
Yep, exactly. That's what I'm
Let's just do that.
considering.
Yeah, that
That's
would be
what I'm, yep.
with me, and I don't want to speak for other members, so.
How's that sound, guys?
Okay, now does the upper numbers contain that reduction?
The upper numbers are only the town government budget.
Correct.
Doesn't include the education budgets.
Does not include the education. Okay, okay. Okay. Then I think we'll, oh, it went away.
Well, can I just jump in
Yes,
here
Peter.
for a second? So we don't need to make, to Mal's point, I think, if I'm understanding you correctly, Mal, we don't need to make a second resolution. We need to pass this first resolution, and then we need to articulate our opinion, and then it's up to the Board of Finance to do the rest, right? I mean, as long as our opinion's stated, which it obviously would be for the record, we don't need to make it as a resolution. Is that what you're saying?
I do it as a resolution, or you do it as a motion that we would recommend that. So,
Yeah, how
I
you
just
do
want
it does not
agree.
me. I mean, if because it's in a resolution, if Donna and or Andy and or Elaine have a reason for putting it into a resolution, then fine, put it into a resolution. But in the past, we've looked for the opinion of Board of Selectmen as to what they think should happen. You know,
okay.
when we start.
And we can do that as a motion. So I can do that as a motion.
That'd be fine.
So, okay, so, as a result of the special meeting budget workshop of April 20th, or April 20, no,
How about March?
as a result of the special meeting and budget workshop of March
22nd.
22nd, 2022, be it resolved that pursuant to the Hebron Town Charter, Chapter 9, Finance and Taxation, Section 902E, the Hebron Board of Selectmen recommend to the Board of Finance a proposed town government expenditure budget for the fiscal year 2022, 2023 of $10,626,599. That breaks down to town government budget of $8,600,194. Contribution to the capital improvement projects over $75,000 of $587,485. Contribution to open space of $150,000. Contribution to capital projects, that's projects 10,000 to 75,000 of $156,796. contribution to revaluation of $40,000, and debt service of $1,092,124. Hearing the proposed resolution, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Gail?
I, Gail Richmond.
Mark?
Mark Rivera, aye.
Peter?
Peter Casper, aye.
Tiffany?
Tiffany Teely, aye.
And myself, Dan Larson, aye. I will do, be the next resolution. Be it resolved that the Hebron Board of Selectmen recommends that the Board of Finance consider making a reduction to the Hebron Board of Education budget in the amount of $118,000 and receive the Ram Board of Education to be included into the town budget. All in favor of that resolution signify by saying aye. Gail?
Gail Richmond, I.
Peter? Or, I'm sorry.
Peter Casper, I mean, I approve, but I just had a question. Do we have time for discussion? Just one item on that?
Yeah.
Before we-
Sure.
Well, do we put that to achieve a targeted mill rate, or does that really, we should be
Sure,
silent on?
no, we can put that in as a friendly amendment.
I think that's our rationale for it, is to achieve a targeted mill rate of 32 as
Yes,
recommended by the town manager, or however you want to word that. But if I could have a friendly amendment, I'd appreciate that.
no, not a problem whatsoever.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Tiffany, I hear
I
you.
have to be honest, I will probably vote no to this. I'm not entirely comfortable with the Board of Selectmen recommending a dollar amount to cut from the Board of Education's budget. I don't really feel that's in our purview. I feel that's the Board of Finance purview. It seemed to me we were discussing that this would be more of a motion and not a resolution. And,
I will change it to a motion then.
you know, I definitely agree the mill rate needs to come in at 32, but I'm not comfortable. I think dollar amounts are best served by the Board of Finance. That's their purview and that's what they're to do. So I'm not comfortable supporting this if it's got a dollar amount in it.
So could we stay on that theme of the targeted mill rate? And then obviously the discussion, gives the Board of Finance plenty of latitude to recognize our opinion. And we just simply are saying that we're asking you to do whatever is necessary to reach the targeted mill rate of 32. And then I think Tiffany makes a good point that we're starting to bleed into the Board of Finance's purview here. And at least that's my experience from having served on a Board of Finances. It's really their job to talk about the dollars, how to achieve that mill rate. But our recommendation is really the mill rate, not so much how they get there. And I think the dialogue supports how we would recommend what they consider, but it doesn't have to be in the motion.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Gail.
I understand Tiffany's thing, as I'm such a grandchildren in school, I'm so pro-ed, but by just saying that we want the Board of Finance to do what they need to do to keep that mill rate at 32, my only fear is that someone may decide they can cut something else from the town operating budget, which Andy and his crew have done such a great job of trimming. And there is nothing there that I would want to see trimmed again or further.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mark.
I completely agree with Gail. I think we need to designate the dollar amount, and I am adamantly opposed to cutting 1 penny from the town budget.
Okay,
It is a big concern about cutting the town budget. It's the quality of life in town. We live here for this rural, rustic area, but we know that we have fire and police protection. We know that we have open space and trails. We know that our roads are taken care of, that they're plowed in a very timely fashion. I don't want to see us stepping back on any of that. And if we cut anything else from the town budget, I don't know what it will do to those services. I would be concerned. So yes, I am concerned about doing anything to the Board of Ed, but we're all part of one great big town and we all have to cooperate and do something. So, and yes, I'm aware of how much what the town, the town Board of Ed has already done to their budget. So it's a dilemma, but we always have these.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna try this.
Wait. Can I, one more, just to beat it to death? No,
Okay.
but you can actually accomplish what everyone I think is trying to accomplish. Because if you say that you move that the Board of Selectmen recommend to the Board of Finance, consider making necessary reductions to the Hebron Board of Education budget and receive the RAM Board of Education, et cetera, to achieve the targeted mill rate of 32 as recommended by the town manager, all you're doing is omitting the 118. You're recommending that the cuts be done from the Board of Ed, and you're continuing the verbiage as currently presented and the specific target of 32. So it clearly makes to the Board of Finance our intentions known, that we're not looking to cut from the town. We're looking for them to look at the Board of Education to achieve the necessary reduction and achieve the 32 mill rate. The way to do that, there's your number. But to tell the Board of Ed the specific number, as I continue to think about this real time, I'm not comfortable with that. That's their purview. But our recommendation is clear. We want it to come from the Board of Ed. And the rest of the resolution makes sense, but we don't put the number in. So that, to Gail's point of, that's where the money should come from, not the town. And the Board of Ed's purview are the actual dollar amounts, the dollar amount itself. So I think we can achieve what I'm hearing everyone ask for, and be very clear that we don't expect the town to be cut, to Gail's point. But the Board of
Okay, Peter. Yeah,
Okay.
that sounds okay to me.
Tiffany, would you support that change or no?
You know, again, Peter, and I'm new to this, so of course I beg forgiveness, but it just seems to me the Board of Finance is the ultimate arbiter of where those cuts are going to come from. And I think they've heard us pretty clearly tonight, that, the budget is as lean as it can get. But the Board of Finance can decide at their next meeting that they want another 30 grand to come from the town. And so I want to make sure that what we recommend is just in alignment with respecting board's purviews. I would support this rather reluctantly because, again, it sounds, like a directive, but this is certainly better than proposing an actual dollar amount, which I don't think is appropriate for us to do.
No, I hear you, and that's one of my earlier questions. Do we even have that power? But this
Yes,
here is
we
a
do, but-
consideration, and I think it still gets us to the same thing. So I'm going to make a motion that the Hebron Board of Selectmen recommend to the Board of Finance to consider making necessary reductions to the Hebron Board of Education budget and receive the RAM Board of Education budget to be included into the town budget. And that the desire is to achieve a targeted mill rate of 32 as recommended by the town manager. Hearing the motion. All in favor and going across, Gail,
Gail Richmond, aye.
Mark,
Mark Rivera, aye.
Tiffany,
Tiffany Teely, a reluctant aye.
Peter,
Peter Casper, aye.
and myself, Dan Larson, aye. And I hear you, Tiffany. I do not disagree. I just, again, another budget year where we're between a rock and a hard place. And, is what it is. Seems like a broken record. Okay, our next, we have a CIP budget resolution. Be it resolved that the Hebron Board of Selectmen recommend to the Board of Finance a proposed CIP budget of $675,088 for the fiscal year 2022, 2023. All in favor of the resolution? Gail,
Gail Richmond, I.
Mark,
Mark Rivera, aye.
Tiffany,
Tiffany Teely, aye.
Peter?
Peter Casper, aye.
And myself, aye. Do we need to do anything else? Do we need to make any discussion that the ARPA funds get it all discussed? How does that fit in? Because I want to make sure that that also gets presented to the public so that we can get that moving forward, even though it's not necessarily a part of the budget per se.
Well, I'll answer that if you want, and then Diane's got her hand up, but.
Yeah.
You just answered your own question. It's not a part of tonight's
Okay.
process, but we will put that meeting together and we should have a public hearing prior to that.
Okay.
Get that done sooner than later, but it's up to your discretion. I think we should, get that list published and get that meeting date set and public hearing set to discuss that.
I definitely agree. Yes, Diane.
Can we identify what was removed from CIP tonight and put on that ARPA list? So we move it up into like the first section of that?
Yeah, we have that.
We all know? Yeah, okay. Oh, you already have it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And that's why it's so important that it get discussed and brought up, so that can get worked on. Okay. I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that basically handles the business of tonight. Am I correct?
Yeah, public comment. And I know Terry McManus typed something in.
Okay. Yeah, and I even printed out the agenda. Okay.
I can read Terry's comment unless he would like to speak, but his comment was, it doesn't look like the budgets have been cut. All budget totals appear to be up.
That is correct. And to add a little bit, quite often I think my input is anti-tax in nature. I'm really for taxes, but I'm also for clarity. And during that discussion, when I asked that question, I thought I heard a few times that budgets have been cut, while on the screen it showed that the budgets were up by, I guess in the town's amount, 2.7578%. And so I was a little bit confused. Part of this is in that you were talking about how to bring this forward to the community and educating them. And one of the things I would say is not increase the budget and then call it a budget cut. The other one is, and this is actually more important, when we go forward every year with the town budget, we show the portion of Hebron's RAM budget in the totals. And quite often, why they may look somewhat even or up and down for Hebron, the RAM budget is predominantly going up every single year. And so just as a suggestion, I would, if we need the information given to the public, a total of what Hebron's paying, that's fine, but I would recommend that we put in a graph showing the historical RAM budget just for information purposes. And thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate you letting me ask the questions.
Not a problem whatsoever. Normally, we don't answer the questions, but I don't know if anybody wants to. Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, so I think I heard Terry's question properly. So I presented the town manager's budget on March 1st with a certain number, and then we've had these workshops. And from that time until now, we've made some reductions, and we moved some things out of the CIP into the ARPA funds. So I'm not even sure if the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance realized tonight, one of my cuts was another $25,000 to open space, bringing that down to 150. So when I said we reduced the budget, it's from the original March 1st presentation of what the departments asked of me. I reduced that request down by 350,000, and then we made further reductions from that March 1st date until now. So that's where that comment came from.
Okay, Andy, appreciate that. And this is an educational experience for me also. I realized in the past I've been too late into this discussion, and it appears as if I was too late again. I appreciate the explanation.
And then I just want to make another quick comment. We are, by statute, the way the questions are listed on the ballot are what is the way that we are required to list the questions. It's not our choice. It's somebody far above us. I do not like the way the questions have to be worded, but you know, that is the way we need to do it legally. Yeah, Mel.
I think I'd like to add to that, Dan. Generally, the last couple of pages of the presentation, and any of my fellow board members, correct me if I'm wrong, usually deal with what are the questions on the referendum, and the total amount of the RAM budget is mentioned in that question. I don't think, well, there's nothing that prohibits us from making comments that, you know, it's gone up every year or whatever. I don't think we want to get deeply into that, but the public should be aware of that. You say, well, they can read the number and they'll be aware of it. But that could happen. So, I mean, that's something that maybe we as the Board of Finance should consider when once we set the budget and, you know, with input from everyone else. The only other thing I wanted to say to address Terry's comment is I'll put my hat on from when I was sitting in Donna's chair and in Elaine's chair on the administration side of a budget. And the public often looks at a year-to-year increase as not a reduction. And they talk about how, well, when you as the administration, meaning when I as the administration talked about a budget cut, and I would always do it the same way Andy did it, they would say, no, you just didn't get the increase that you wanted. And so I did not only, well, we heard this from Terry tonight, and that one comment was made to be by one person that I saw at the end of Maple Fest. So we just need to be aware of that. And if I'm putting words into your mouth, Terry, I apologize. But thank you for your attention and ability to speak, Mr. Chairman.
Not a problem.
Thanks, Mel.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Peter. Yes.
Yeah, just public comment. I just wanted to thank you, Terry, because I think of all the years that you're always, I think of you as always providing thoughtful engagement, and you go to a lot of these meetings, and I wish more folks in town made the commitment that you did and do to bringing thoughtful engagement to the process. So I just wanted to thank you for spending the time to join us.
I appreciate that, Peter, and I thank you guys for all your hard work. It's a lot of work.
Well, thank you. And thank you for attending, because again, very few people attend. And that's always troubling to us. So again, thank you very much. Any other public comment? I guess not. I think that concludes our business then, unless I'm mistaken.
Then at 9:20, I will make a motion that we adjourn. All in favor?
I see
All
one
right.
hand up. I see two
Yeah.
hands up.
Beat
I
is
see
up,
two hands up.
everybody's up.
Diane's gonna stay on.
Diane's gonna call her group.
And I'll also make a motion to adjourn the Board of Finance.
Good night,
Everybody,
everybody. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you
Good
all.
night, everyone.
Thank you all. It's been another year. So.